Hey, what's up? This is Brother Ali. You're checking out HardknockTV. I love these guys. Stay here.
Murder, murder, murder. Kill, kill, kill. Cannibal walk the earth to get ill, blood spill.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about was the article about Trayvon Martin. I felt like you addressed a lot of stuff that I kind of want to go over just for our viewers to see. One of the things you talked about was culturally acceptable standards.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that a little bit?
There are so many ideas that are beneath the surface. We have been trained to believe, subconsciously, those of us who are privileged and those of us who don't have to deal with race on a regular basis. We've been taught and trained to live under the assumption that we're post-racial, that we should be colorblind, that all of the problems and injustices that we had in the past are over. We've been taught to think of race in a historical sense, and really in an unrealistic historical sense. We have this idea that there was slavery and then we ended that, so we're great for that. And then there was racism, and then in Martin Luther King's time we ended that, and we're great for that. So we talk about those things in historical context, almost like almost to celebrate ourselves rather than to really try to understand them in any kind of meaningful way. So what we're seeing with this case in particular is this kind of pulling the veil off of what really is there. We've learned to be very polite about race and very quiet and tiptoe around it, and but we haven't actually solved the structural problems, and that's what we're talking about. There are racism itself is an institution in our society, and racism also exists in all of the institutions. We're taught to think about racism in terms of, one individual to another individual. Do I hate people who aren't white? Do I say, racial slurs and things like that? And if I can answer no to both of those questions, then I'm completely off the hook and everything is all good. And we say, well, yeah, there are racist people out there, and we talk like there are certain individuals that are racist, and as long as you stay away from those individuals, you'll be fine. But the reality is that not only is racism itself an institutional part of our society, but every important part of our society, we see racism, which is more than just bigotry, it's more than just prejudice, it's more than just people being rude to each other or hurting each other's feelings. What we're talking about is our structural barriers that hold our extra challenges to people who are not white. And it seems like if you look at the statistics, there seems to be a hierarchy. And in a highly competitive society, those things benefit the people who aren't held back by them. And so in every major aspect of American life, from healthcare and employment and education and wealth and home ownership, and every way that we can gauge quality of life, we see that people of color have greater challenges and are not experiencing the quality of life that white people are. And so in this particular case, when we start talking about these things, people start looking for some way to make this not a racial issue. Searching for anything, almost desperately. You see this kind of like desperation in people, that they're looking for anything in the case. Well, let's wait till all the facts come out. The major facts are out. The major facts are that this guy approached a black kid who was unarmed and wasn't doing anything wrong, approached him, there may or may not have been a scuffle, and he shot and killed him. And the police took him at his word that he was defending himself, that the grown man with the gun was defending himself against the kid with the Skittles and the iced tea. They say, well, why are you making this about race? If there were killings across the country that were really specific and unique, say somebody was, all of these victims were showing up with their left foot cut off and the tip of their tongue cut off or something, you would start to say, you'd be a bad investigator or detective to not want to connect those dots and say, well, what is it about these? These are connected. This is a serial killer. And what we have is a 500-year-old legacy of African Americans being killed, particularly young men. It's all people of color and it includes women too, but there's a specific thing about young black men being murdered by people who say that they're protecting us. The crimes do not go, they find a way to blame the victim. They said Emmett Till whistled at a white woman. They say that all of these things, he did something he wasn't supposed to be doing. And then they always find a way to let the killers go free under some weird little loophole in the law. And, this case is part of that. This case is part of that legacy, and it is part of racism is a killer. Racism is a serial killer. And so that's why we need to see it that way. One of the facts or details that's come out is, and I say that in quotations because, people are just looking for ways to make this not about race. And kind of fortify this idea in our minds that George Zimmerman had a reason to be suspicious of Trayvon, or that we as a society should be suspicious of Trayvon. And so one of the things that was brought up was the hoodie. One of brought up tattoos and maybe that he had a gold, some gold stuff in or metal stuff in his mouth. These ideas that unless people of color are culturally acceptable to us, that it's somehow people of color's job to present themselves in a way that's always that's always comforting to us, that somehow being black and being culturally black is not acceptable, and that we are allowed to be suspicious in those or afraid or feel like defensive. Unless you're making me feel comfortable, then I am within my rights to be to be afraid of you, And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to start unpacking some of these ideas, to say, well, what are we really saying? What does it really mean to bring up the idea of the hoodie? We're speaking in codes, we're sending symbols to each other through the airwaves, and we're not unpacking them. President Obama said if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. That's a code that we need to unpack. And when we start to examine it and investigate it and look around and explore it, we see that yes, we do have a president who's not fully white. We have a president who's black and white, but the fact that he's the black president in America says a lot. The fact that he's an other, like the fact that, he was half white, his mother was white, he was raised by the white side of his family, that's not white enough for us. That's not white, you're other. So he's the first black president, even though he's equally black and white, and culturally as well. When he says that, the fact that we have a president who's not fully white now, but that he was saying, if we open it up, that he was, regardless of the fact that he's president, or even though he's president, or along with the reality that yes, we have a black president, his son, the president's son, could be walking down the street, or his nephews, or I'm sure somebody on Michelle's side of the family that's related to him is treated in this way, and that's why there's this reaction, this kind of visceral reaction to this case.